May 5, 1945. 5 days after Adolf Hitler put a bullet in his head in a Berlin bunker. The war in Europe is supposed to be over. Allied forces are celebrating in the streets of Paris, London, and New York. Nazi Germany is collapsing. The Third Reich is dead. But at a medieval castle deep in the Austrian Alps, a battle is raging. An American Sherman tank, call sign Besotten Jenny, is firing its 75 cannon at approaching SS troops. But look closer at the men defending that tank. Look at their uniforms, their helmets. They aren't Americans. They are soldiers of the German Wehrmacht, the same army that invaded Poland, that marched into France, that fought across North Africa and the frozen steppes of Russia. And right now, they're fighting alongside the US Army, shoulder to shoulder, sharing ammunition, defending the same walls. This is the story of the Battle of Castle Itter, the strangest battle of World War II. The only time in the entire war that Americans and Germans fought side by side as allies to stop the SS. But to understand how this impossible moment happened, we need to go back 3 years earlier, to 1943, to when this castle became a prison for some of the most powerful men in Europe. Castle Itter sits on a hilltop in the Tyrol region of Austria, near the town of Vergel. It's a medieval fortress, built in the 13th century. For hundreds of years, it was home to Austrian nobility. But in 1943, Heinrich Himmler's SS had a different use for it. They turned it into a high-security prison, not for common soldiers or resistance fighters. This prison was reserved for VIPs, very important prisoners. The Nazi regime called them prominent hostages, men and women who could be used as bargaining chips, insurance policies, human shields, if the war ever turned against Germany. And by 1943, the war was very much turning against Germany. So let me introduce you to the prisoners of Castle Itter. First, there's Paul Reynaud, former Prime Minister of France. He was the man leading France when Germany invaded in 1940. After France fell, the Nazis arrested him. They blamed him for the war. They wanted him alive, because maybe, just maybe, they could use him to negotiate peace with the Allies someday. Then there's Édouard Daladier, another former French Prime Minister. You might know him as the man who signed the Munich Agreement in 1938, the deal that handed Czechoslovakia to Hitler in exchange for a promise of peace. That promise, of course, was a lie. Daladier knew it, and now he was paying the price. General Maurice Gamelin, the French military commander who led the defense of France in 1940. After the catastrophic defeat, the collaborationist Vichy government put him on trial. Then the Nazis locked him up at Itter. General Maxime Weygand, another French commander, 80 years old by 1945, a veteran of World War I, he'd spent decades in the military, and now he was a prisoner in a castle, watching his country tear itself apart. Marie-Agnes Kelliot, the sister of Charles de Gaulle, the leader of Free France. The Nazis arrested her specifically because of her brother. She was leverage, a way to pressure de Gaulle if they ever needed to. And then there's Jaume Borotra, the bounding Basque, a legend in the tennis world, Wimbledon champion, Davis Cup star. But Borotra wasn't just an athlete. He'd been a government minister under Vichy France, and when he tried to defect to the Allies in North Africa, the Nazis grabbed him. These weren't random prisoners. These were the kind of people you'd see in history books. Prime ministers, generals, national heroes, and the SS guards at Castle Itter treated them relatively well. They weren't tortured. They weren't starved, because these prisoners had value. Alive, they could be traded. Dead, they were worthless. For nearly 2 years, they lived in this strange limbo, watching the war through the windows of their medieval prison, listening to the radio when the guards allowed it, hearing about D-Day, the liberation of Paris, the Red Army closing in from the east. And slowly they began to realize something. The Nazis were going to lose, which meant their value as hostages was dropping by the day. and that made them very, very dangerous to the SS. April 1945. The Third Reich is in its death throes. The Western Allies are driving deep into Germany. The Soviets are smashing through from the east. Berlin is surrounded. Hitler is hiding in his bunker, screaming at generals who command armies that no longer exist. And all across Nazi-occupied territory, SS officers are receiving the same order: destroy everything. Leave nothing for the Allies. No infrastructure, no supplies, no prisoners, especially no prisoners who could testify about war crimes. At Castle Itter, the prisoners can hear the artillery in the distance. They know the Americans are getting closer. Liberation is maybe days away, but on May 3, 1945, something terrifying happens. The SS guards start to leave. Not all of them, but most of them. They pack their gear, climb into trucks, and drive away into the mountains. At first, the prisoners are relieved. Finally, freedom. But then they realize the truth. The guards didn't leave because they were surrendering. They left because they were regrouping. There were fanatical Waffen-SS units still operating in the mountains around Itter. Die-hard Nazis who believed they could still win, or at least make the Allies pay in blood for every inch of ground. And those units had orders: kill the prisoners. All of them. Before the Americans arrive, the prisoners are trapped. They're free to walk out of the castle, sure, but the moment they step outside, they're dead. SS patrols are everywhere. The roads are mined. The forests are crawling with soldiers who have nothing left to lose. So they make a desperate decision. Ord tellers Tranis. They send out the castle cook, a Czech man named Andreas Krobot. He's not a soldier. He's not important. Which means maybe, just maybe, the SS won't shoot him on sight. Krobot climbs onto a bicycle and rides down the mountain road toward the valley below. He's looking for American troops, anyone who can help. But the first soldiers he finds aren't American. They're German. His full name is Joseph Gangl, but everyone calls him Sepp. He's 43 years old, a career officer in the Wehrmacht. He joined the German army long before the Nazis came to power. He fought in Poland, in France, on the Eastern Front. And he is done. By May 1945, Gangl has seen what the Nazi regime really is. He's watched the SS commit atrocities. He's seen the Wehrmacht, his army, used as a tool for genocide and conquest. He's fought in a war he no longer believes in for a government he despises. But here's the thing about Sepp Gangl. He's not a coward. He didn't desert. He didn't run away to hide in the mountains. Instead, he did something far more dangerous. He joined the Austrian resistance, in secret. While still wearing his Wehrmacht uniform, Gangl made contact with resistance fighters in the Tyrol region. He passed them intelligence. He sabotaged Nazi operations when he could. He protected civilians from SS reprisals. And now, in the final days of the war, he's trying to do one last thing: keep people alive until the shooting stops. Gangl has a small unit of Wehrmacht soldiers under his command. Maybe a dozen men. Like him, they're exhausted. They don't want to fight anymore. They just want to go home. When Andreas Krobot rides up on his bicycle and tells Gangl about the prisoners at Castle Itter and the SS death squads heading there, Gangl knows exactly what's at stake. If he does nothing, those people die. But if he helps them, he's committing treason. So with aid, in the eyes of the SS, he's a traitor to Germany. And the SS doesn't take prisoners. They execute traitors on the spot. Gangl looks at his men. He looks at the cook. He makes a decision. He's going to save them. But he can't do it alone. His unit is too small. They don't have heavy weapons. If the SS come in force, Gangl and his men will be slaughtered. He needs help. He needs the Americans. So Gangl climbs into his Kubelwagen, a German military jeep, and ties a white flag to the antenna. And then he drives toward the American lines. It's one of the bravest things you can do in war. Surrender to the enemy, because you're completely at their mercy. If the Americans think he's a threat, they'll shoot first and ask questions later. But Gangel doesn't have a choice. He drives through the forest roads, his white flag snapping in the wind, until he reaches an American checkpoint. The GIs raise their rifles, they shout at him to stop, to get out of the vehicle, to put his hands up. Gangel does, he steps out, hands raised, and in broken English, he tries to explain. There's a castle, there are prisoners, important prisoners, French VIPs. The SS are coming to kill them. We need help. The American soldiers don't know what to make of this. A German officer, surrendering, asking for help to fight other Germans. It sounds insane, but then one man steps forward, Captain Jack Lee. Jack Lee is 27 years old. He's from New York. Before the war, he worked in his family's business. But when Pearl Harbor happened, he enlisted. He became a tank commander in the 23rd Tank Battalion, 12th Armored Division. His unit has been fighting across France and Germany for months. They've seen brutal combat, lost friends, liberated concentration camps. By May 1945, Lee and his men are exhausted. The war is basically over. They're just waiting for the official surrender. But Lee isn't the kind of officer who waits for orders. When Gangel explains the situation, hostages, SS death squads, a ticking clock, Lee doesn't hesitate. He doesn't call headquarters. He doesn't ask permission. He doesn't wait for a senior officer to approve the mission. He just says, "Let's go." Lee has one Sherman tank left in his platoon. The rest were damaged or left behind during earlier fighting. This tank is nicknamed Besotten Jenny, a reference to being drunk. The crew painted the name on the side as a joke. Lee climbs onto the tank. He tells his crew, "We're going to a castle. We're rescuing some French VIPs. And we're doing it with a German officer." His men think he's crazy, but they trust him. So begins one of the strangest convoys in military history. An American Sherman tank, leading the way. A German Kubelwagen, carrying Major Gangel. A truck full of Wehrmacht soldiers, all of them flying white flags. All of them heading toward the same destination, Castle Itter. When the convoy arrives at the castle on the afternoon of May 4th, the French prisoners can't believe their eyes. First comes the American tank. Okay, that makes sense. The Americans are here to rescue us. But then comes the German vehicle, and German soldiers, carrying rifles, climbing out of the truck. For a moment, there's panic. Is this a trick? Are the Germans here to execute us after all? But then Gangel steps forward. He speaks French, not fluently, but enough. He explains who he is, what he's doing, that he's here to protect them. Paul Richeneau, the former prime minister, stares at him. A German officer, offering to fight against his own country, to protect the very people Germany had imprisoned. Richeneau shakes Gangel's hand, and then Captain Lee steps forward. He's chewing on a cigar, looking around the castle, assessing the defenses. "All right," Lee says. "Here's the situation. The SS are coming. We don't know how many, could be 100, could be more. We're going to hold this castle until reinforcements arrive. Everybody who can hold a rifle, you're a defender now." The French prisoners look at each other. These men are in their 60s and 70s. They haven't been in combat in years. Some of them never were. But they nod. Jean Borotra, the tennis star, picks up a rifle. "I haven't fired one of these since World War I, he says with a grin. "You'll remember," Lee says. The Americans and Germans start working together, setting up firing positions, barricading the gates, positioning the Sherman tank to cover the main approach. It's surreal. German soldiers and American GIs, sharing cigarettes, checking each other's weapons, preparing to fight the same enemy. One American soldier, a kid from Ohio, turns to a Wehrmacht soldier and says, "So, no hard feelings, right?" The German soldier shrugs. No hard feelings. They shake hands, and then as the sun sets over the Tyrolean Alps, they wait. Because everyone knows the SS are coming. That night, the castle is quiet. Too quiet. The defenders take shifts on watch. American and German soldiers standing side by side at the parapets, scanning the tree line for movement. Inside the castle's main hall, the French prisoners sit around a table. They're talking quietly, sharing stories, trying not to think about what's coming. Paul Reynaud looks at Major Gangle, who's checking ammunition supplies. "Why are you doing this?" Reynaud asks. Gangle looks up. He's silent for a moment. Then he says, in careful French, "Because it's the right thing to do." Reynaud nods slowly. "You know what they'll do to you if they catch you." "The SS." "Yes," Gangle says. "I know. Then why risk it?" Gangle looks out the window, toward the dark mountains. "I've spent 5 years fighting for something I don't believe in. I've watched my country destroy itself. I've seen what we've become." He turns back to Reynaud. "If I can save lives now at the end, maybe it means something." Across the room, Captain Lee is talking to his tank crew. They're exhausted. They've been in combat for months, but they know what's at stake. "We hold until relief gets here," Lee says. "That's the mission. We hold." One of his men, a gunner named Private First Class Allo Worsham, looks nervous. "Sir, what if they bring anti-tank guns?" Lee doesn't sugarcoat it. "Then we're in trouble." Outside, in the courtyard, Jean Barotra is practicing with his rifle. He's 70 years old, but he moves like an athlete. Even now, an American soldier watches him. "You really a tennis player?" "I was," Barotra says, working the bolt. "Wimbledon 1924 and 1926. "No kidding. You ever kill anybody before?" Barotra pauses. "In the First War, yes. In the trenches. It was a long time ago." "Think you still got it?" Barotra smiles grimly. "I guess we'll find out." The hours crawl by. At midnight, a German soldier on watch thinks he sees movement in the trees. He raises his rifle. The American next to him does the same. They wait. Nothing. Just the wind. But everyone knows, it's not a question of if the SS will attack. It's when. May 5th, 1945. 4 a.m. The attack comes with the dawn. The first shots echo across the valley, just as the sun rises over the mountains. Rifle fire. Machine gun bursts. The crack of bullets hitting stone. The SS have arrived. From the castle walls, the defenders can see them moving through the forest. At least 100 men. Maybe more. Waffen-SS troops, from the 17th SS Panzergrenadier Division. They're not regular soldiers. They're fanatics. Elite troops who still believe in the Nazi cause. Or maybe they just don't know how to stop fighting. Captain Lee is in the turret of Besotten Jenny, scanning the tree line with his binoculars. "Here they come," he shouts. The Sherman's gun rotates, aims at a cluster of SS troops, advancing through the trees. Boom! The 75 mm cannon fires. The shell explodes in the forest. Trees shatter, men scream. But the SS keep coming. Inside the castle, the defenders are at their positions. Americans at the east wall, Germans at the west, the French VIPs, armed with rifles, covering the north approach. It's chaos. Bullets are slamming into the castle walls. Windows shatter, chunks of stone explode from near misses. Major Gangle is on the west wall, firing his Core 98K rifle with mechanical precision. Next to him, a Wehrmacht soldier, a kid maybe 19 years old, is shaking. "Steady," Gangle says. "Aim, breathe, fire." The kid fires, misses. Again, Gangle says. On the east wall, an American GI Sergeant Bill Elliott is firing his M1 Garand in controlled bursts. Next to him is Paul Reynaud, the former Prime Minister of France, awkwardly handling a rifle. "How do I?" Reynaud starts to ask. "Just point it at the bad guys and pull the trigger." Elliott shouts over the noise. Reynaud does. The rifle kicks hard into his shoulder. He has no idea if he hit anything, but he keeps firing. Down in the courtyard, the Sherman tank is dominating the battlefield. Every time the SS try to advance, Lee's gunner sends a high explosive shell into their ranks. But the SS are smart. They're spreading out, using the forest for cover, and they brought something the defenders didn't expect. An anti-tank gun, a Pak-40, 75 mm German-made. Ironic, considering who it's being used against. The SS crew sets it up on a ridge, overlooking the castle. They load an armor-piercing shell. A German soldier on the wall sees it. "Panzer ABWH," he screams. "Anti-tank gun." Captain Lee hears the warning. He tries to rotate the turret, to target the Pak-40, before they can fire. But he's too slow. Crack. The anti-tank gun fires. The shell screams through the air, and slams into the side of besotten Jenny. The impact is catastrophic. The shell punches through the Sherman's armor, and detonates inside. The tank doesn't explode, not like in the movies, but it's disabled. Smoke pours from the hatches. "Bail out," Lee screams. The crew scrambles out of the tank. They're alive, but they're hurt. Burns. Shrapnel wounds. Private Worsham has blood running down his face. They drag themselves toward the castle gate. Defenders pull them inside. Besotten Jenny, the Sherman tank that led the defense, is dead. And now the defenders have no heavy weapons. The SS see the tank burning. They know this is their chance. They press the attack. Without the tank, the defenders are in serious trouble. The SS are closing in from all sides now. They've brought up mortars, machine guns, and what looks like a flamethrower team. Inside the castle, ammunition is running low. Sergeant Elliott is counting magazines. "We've got maybe 30 minutes of ammo left at this rate." Captain Lee, bandaged and limping from the tank hit, nods grimly. "Then we make every shot count." On the west wall, Major Gangl is doing the same math. His Wehrmacht soldiers are down to a handful of rounds each. One of his men, a corporal named Johann Meyer, looks at him. "Sir, we could surrender. They're SS." "But maybe." "No," Gangl says flatly. "You know what they do to traitors. They'll shoot us. And then they'll shoot the prisoners." Meyer nods. He knows Gangl is right. The SS are setting up for a final assault. They're bringing up explosives to blow the main gate. Inside the castle's great hall, the French VIPs are taking cover behind overturned furniture. They're bruised, exhausted, and terrified. But they're still fighting. Edbord Daladier, the man who signed the Munich Agreement, is reloading a rifle with shaking hands. "I never thought I'd die like this," he mutters. "We're not dead yet," says Marie-Agnes Callio, de Gaulle's sister. She's firing out a window with surprising accuracy. General Weygand, 80 years old, is sitting calmly in a corner, a pistol in his lap. "If they get in," he says quietly, "save the last bullet for yourself." Outside, the SS are preparing to blow the gate. They pack explosives against the heavy wooden door. They light the fuse. "Everybody down," Captain Lee shouts. Boom. The gate explodes inward. Splinters and smoke fill the courtyard. The SS start pouring through the breach. This is it. The final assault. Defenders at the gate are firing point blank into the attackers. Americans, Germans, French, all fighting together. But there are too many SS. They're pushing into the courtyard. A German soldier goes down, shot in the chest. An American GI drags him to cover. Captain Lee is firing his pistol, one-handed, blood soaking through his uniform. He's been hit again, but he's not stopping. And then, in the chaos, Major Gangl sees something that makes his blood run cold. Paul Reynaud, the former Prime Minister of France, is standing in a window on the second floor, completely exposed, and an SS sniper has him in his sights. Gangl doesn't think, he just moves. He sprints toward the staircase, taking the steps 2 at a time. He bursts into the room where Reynaud is standing. "Get down," Gangl shouts in French. He runs toward Reynaud, arms outstretched to push him out of the way, and then the sniper fires. The bullet hits Gangl in the chest. He falls. Reynaud stares in horror. The German officer, the man who risked everything to save them, is lying on the floor, bleeding out. Reynaud drops to his knees beside him. No, no, no. Gangel's eyes are open. He's struggling to breathe. He tries to say something, but no words come out. And then he's gone. Major Josef Sepp, Gangel, 43 years old, Wehrmacht officer, Austrian resistance fighter, dead, saving the life of a man whose country he'd once invaded. Gangel's death hits the defenders like a hammer. The German soldiers are devastated. They've just lost their commanding officer, the man who convinced them to fight. The Americans are stunned. They'd been fighting alongside this man for less than 24 hours, but they respected him. And the French prisoners are shaken to their core. A German officer just died to save one of them. But there's no time to mourn. The SS are inside the courtyard now. They're pushing toward the main keep. It's hand-to-hand fighting, brutal, desperate. Captain Lee, wounded and bleeding, is down to his last magazine. The defenders are being pushed back, room by room, into the central tower. This is the end. And then Jean Baratra does something insane. The 70-year-old tennis champion looks at the castle wall, looks at the forest beyond, looks back at his fellow prisoners. "I'm going for help," he says. "You'll never make it," someone shouts. The SS are everywhere. Baratra smiles. "I'm the bounding Basque. I vaulted worse nets than this." And then, incredibly, he runs toward the wall. He jumps, grabs the top, pulls himself up. SS soldiers see him. They open fire. Bullets crack through the air around him. But Baratra vaults over the wall, just like he used to vault over tennis nets at Wimbledon, and disappears into the forest on the other side. The defenders stare in disbelief. Did he just, inside the castle? The situation is hopeless. The SS are blowing through the inner doors. Ammunition is gone. Men are fighting with rifle butts, fists, anything they can grab. Captain Lee is backed into a corner, pistol empty, blood pouring from multiple wounds. This is it. And then, they hear it. A distant rumble. Engines. Everyone freezes. Even the SS. That sound. They all know that sound. Tanks. The rumble gets louder, closer, and then, bursting out of the forest road, comes an entire American armored column. Sherman tanks, half-tracks, infantry. The relief force has arrived. The SS see them coming, and they know they're done. They break. They scatter, running into the forest, abandoning the attack, trying to escape before the American tanks obliterate them. The tanks roll into the castle courtyard. Their machine guns sweep the tree line, cutting down fleeing SS troops. It's over. The siege is broken. The American relief column secures the castle within minutes. Medics rush in to treat the wounded. Captain Jack Lee is found slumped against a wall, barely conscious, covered in blood. He's got multiple wounds, but he's alive. The French VIPs are shaken but unharmed. Every single one of them survived. And then, incredibly, Jean Baratra walks back through the gate. He made it. He ran 3 miles through enemy territory, found the American column, and led them back to the castle. At 70 years old, the bounding Basque indeed. But there's one man who didn't make it. Major Joseph Gangel. His body is carried out of the castle with full military honors. American soldiers salute. German soldiers salute. The French prisoners salute. Paul Reynaud, the man Gangel died to save, stands over the body with tears streaming down his face. "He saved my life," Reynaud says quietly. "A German officer saved my life." In the days that follow, the story of Castle Itter spreads through the Allied forces. Nobody can quite believe it. Americans and Germans, fighting together, against the SS? It sounds like fiction, but it happened. Captain Jack Lee is awarded the Distinguished Service Cross for his actions. His citation reads, "For extraordinary heroism in action against the enemy." The French government honors him as well. Paul Reynaud personally writes a letter, thanking him. Major Joseph Gangel is honored by the Austrian resistance. After the war, The town of Wurgel names a street after him, Joseph Gangelstrasse. There's a memorial plaque in the town square. It reads, "He gave his life to save those he once called enemies." The German soldiers, who fought alongside the Americans, are quietly released. They're not prosecuted. They're not punished. The American commanders recognize that these men did something extraordinary. They chose humanity over orders. And the prisoners of Castle Itter, they go home. Paul Reynaud returns to France and lives another 20 years, always telling the story of the German officer who saved his life. Jean Barotra returns to tennis. He lives to be 95 years old. Until the day he dies, he talks about the battle at Castle Itter and the day he vaulted a wall to save his friends. Édouard Daladier writes his memoirs. He dedicates a chapter to Major Gangel and Castle Itter. It still stands today. It's a private residence now. You can't go inside. But there's a small plaque near the gate. It commemorates the battle, the strangest battle of World War II, the day enemies became brothers. So what do we take from this story? In the final days of the worst war in human history, when the world was burning and millions had died, a handful of men made a choice. They chose to see each other not as enemies, but as human beings. Captain Jack Lee didn't have to help Major Gangel. He could have arrested him. He could have turned him away. But he didn't. Major Gangel didn't have to risk his life for French prisoners. He could have walked away, disappeared into the mountains, survived. But he didn't. And those German soldiers who fought alongside the Americans, they could have deserted. They could have joined the SS. But they didn't. They all made the hard choice, the right choice. And because of that, 14 people, who should have died, lived. There's a quote I think about when I hear this story. It's from the Talmud. Whoever saves one life, saves the world entire. Major Joseph Gangel saved Paul Reynaud's life. And in doing so he saved his own soul. He spent 5 years fighting for a regime he grew to despise. But in the end, he found redemption, not through victory, not through survival, but through sacrifice. That's what makes this story so powerful. It's not about heroes and villains. It's about human beings, making choices in impossible circumstances, choosing compassion over cruelty, choosing courage over convenience, choosing to do the right thing, even when it costs everything. On May 5, 1945, at a castle in the Austrian Alps, enemies became brothers, not because a general ordered it, not because of politics or propaganda or national interest, but because a handful of men looked at each other and saw not Germans or Americans or French, but human beings worth saving. And maybe, in the end, that's the only thing that really matters. The Battle of Castle Itter remains the only documented time in World War II that American and German forces fought as allies. It's a story that should be told more often. A reminder that even in the darkest moments of history, humanity can shine through. So was this the strangest battle of World War II, or do you know another one? Let me know in the comments. I read every single one, and if you want to hear more untold stories from history, stories that deserve to be remembered, hit that subscribe button. Because there are so many more missions to uncover. I'll see you in the next one.